Have you ever won an argument and still felt empty inside? You had all the facts. You made your point. Maybe you even shut the other person down. But when the conversation ended, instead of feeling proud or at peace, you felt drained. Almost as if something sacred inside you had been chipped away. Why does that happen? Let me tell you a story. There was once a man, intelligent, articulate, well-read. Every conversation became a debate, and every debate a battle. He had a sharp tongue and an even sharper memory. He corrected people constantly, challenged every opinion, and never backed down. People admired his intellect, but they also feared him. He thought he was winning, until one day, he realized he was eating dinner alone again. His phone buzzed less. People smiled more when he left the room than when he entered it. And deep down, he was tired. Not physically, but tired of needing to be right. He had mastered logic, but had lost the wisdom of restraint. In the philosophy of Stoicism, that's the exact trap we're warned against. The Stoics teach us that truth doesn't need a loud voice to be valid. It doesn't need applause, agreement, or social proof. It simply is, independent of opinions, untouched by ego. And that's the first lesson many of us miss. You don't have to attend every argument you're invited to. You don't have to fight to prove you're right. Because truth, when grounded in reason, defends itself. What matters more is how we live, not how loud we speak. The Stoics believed in the supremacy of reason. They believed in humbling the ego. And they believed that silence, deliberate, grounded silence, is a form of inner power. Let that sink in for a second. Reason is our guide. Ego is our enemy. And silence is our strength. In a world obsessed with visibility and validation, those three principles are nothing short of revolutionary. And yet, they've been here for over 2,000 years. So today, I want to take you on a journey, not just into Stoic thought, but into Stoic action. Into the kind of quiet discipline that makes a person unshakable. Because here's a question I want you to carry through this entire video. What if your greatest strength lies not in what you say, but in what you choose not to? You don't need to shout to be powerful. You don't need to prove to be wise. And you don't need to rise above others to rise above yourself. Let's explore what it truly means to focus on reason, lower yourself, and stay silent, in a noisy world that constantly dares you to do the opposite. Let's break down the heart of this Stoic lesson. It comes in three parts, three pillars of strength in a world full of noise. 1. Focus on reason. To the Stoics, reason was not just a mental tool. It was our very nature. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is the Stoics' foundation. The belief that reason is the one thing we truly control. Not our circumstances, not other people's opinions, not fortune or fame, but our reasoning mind, our ability to interpret events and choose a wise response. When we focus on reason, we stop reacting out of emotion. We stop letting anger, fear, or pride take the wheel. Instead, we pause. We observe. We think. Focusing on reason doesn't mean you're cold or emotionless. It means your emotions follow your values, not the other way around. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you made a decision you regretted because you didn't think it through? Most of us can recall that moment clearly. Because when we don't lead with reason, chaos usually follows. But when we do, we gain clarity. And clarity is rare currency in a chaotic world. 2. Lower yourself. This might sound strange. Lower yourself? Aren't we supposed to lift ourselves up? Believe in ourselves? Build confidence? Yes, but here's the catch. The Stoics weren't against confidence. They were against ego. The kind of ego that makes us feel superior. That whispers, "You know better." That urges us to speak just to impress. That demands respect before we've earned it. Humility, in the Stoic worldview, is not weakness, it's wisdom. It's the understanding that we don't know everything, that we can learn from everyone, that sometimes the loudest person in the room is the most insecure. Epictetus, born a slave and later a revered teacher, said it best. It is impossible to begin to learn that which one thinks one already knows. To lower yourself is to open yourself, to growth, to understanding, to peace. So when we say lower yourself, we're not talking about shame or self-doubt. We're talking about ego reduction. We're talking about recognizing that truth matters more than pride. 3. Stay silent. In modern culture, silence is almost suspicious. We equate it with weakness, shyness, or even guilt. But the Stoics flipped this completely. To them, silence was a sign of strength. Because silence takes control. Silence requires restraint. And silence often says more than noise ever could. We've all been in conversations where someone is baiting us, poking, provoking, trying to get a reaction. The Stoic doesn't take the bait. Why? Because the Stoic knows something deeper. You don't lose power by staying silent. You often gain it. When everyone's shouting, the quiet voice is the one people lean in to hear. There's a story that gets told in leadership circles. A man once sat in a heated meeting with his team. Everyone was talking over each other. Opinions clashed. Voices rose. The man said nothing. When asked afterward why he stayed silent, he simply said, "I was thinking." You can't listen and speak at the same time. And there it is. Silence is not the absence of thought. It's the presence of discipline. The link between all three. So, why do these 3 Stoic principles work so well together? Because they build on each other. When you focus on reason, you align with your highest self. When you lower yourself, you remove ego from the equation. And when you stay silent, you give space for wisdom to speak when it's ready. The result? You become more deliberate, more grounded, more powerful. Not because you dominate others, but because you've mastered yourself. And that's the Stoic definition of strength. Not external control, but internal mastery. Let me tell you a story. It's not ancient. It didn't happen in a Roman palace or a Greek amphitheater. It happened in a corporate boardroom just a few years ago. The man's name was James, a senior executive at a fast-growing tech company. Respected, intelligent, and driven. But the one thing everyone knew about James? He didn't talk much. He listened. Now, this made him a bit of a mystery. In meetings, while others pitched their ideas, debated strategies, and sometimes, let's be honest, showed off, James would simply sit back. Arms folded, eyes steady, no phone, no fidgeting, just watching. Some thought he was cold, others thought he was uninterested. But the truth was, James was practicing something very few people do in high-pressure environments. Self-restraint. Let's zoom in on one particular meeting. The company was on the verge of launching a major product. Tensions were high. Marketing, engineering, finance. Each department had its own opinion about how it should be rolled out. Voices clashed. Data was questioned. Egos flared. One manager, in particular, Mike, began aggressively pushing his viewpoint. He waved spreadsheets, raised his voice, and even mocked a junior employee's suggestion in front of the room. James said nothing. People looked at him, expecting him to step in. After all, he was the highest-ranking person in the room. Still nothing. He just nodded slowly and let the storm pass. After the meeting, Mike approached James privately. Confident, arrogant. "So, did you see that? I think I won that one," he smirked. James looked at him. Calm, composed. Then he said one sentence. You won the noise, Mike, but you lost the room. That was it. No yelling, no public correction, no display of authority. Just a calm observation rooted in truth. And that's when the story shifts. Over the next few months, people gravitated more toward James. They sought his guidance. They mirrored his demeanor. He never needed to dominate a room, because he had already mastered himself. Eventually, Mike was moved to a different department. Not because James pushed for it, but because Mike's loud confidence masked poor judgment, while James' quiet presence revealed wise leadership. That's stoicism in action. Let's unpack what James actually did. He focused on reason. He didn't get emotionally pulled into the drama. He observed the facts, the energy in the room, the behaviors, not just the words. He let logic, not ego, decide when and if to speak. He lowered himself. Even as the senior figure, he didn't need to prove his authority. He understood that humility commands more respect than bravado. He didn't correct publicly, because that would be about his pride, not the team's growth. He stayed silent. He chose stillness over speech, not out of fear, but from discipline. And when he finally spoke, it mattered, because it was rare, and it was earned. Compare that with most of what we see today. Online arguments, outrage, proving someone wrong in the comments section. Social media is a stage where silence looks like weakness, and shouting is mistaken for strength. But true influence doesn't come from volume. It comes from clarity. It comes from character. James didn't become a better leader by saying more. He became one by embodying the core Stoic ideal. Don't explain your philosophy. Embody it. He didn't need to argue for respect. He earned it by living the values: reason, humility, and silence. And here's what makes this story stick. Anyone can do what James did. You don't need a title. You don't need to be the smartest in the room. You just need to be the calmest. And that's a power that can't be taken from you. Let's ground everything we've explored in the words of one of the greatest Stoic philosophers of all time. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius Meditations. Think about that. How often do we fall into the trap of talking about values, debating what's right, what's fair, what's noble, while neglecting to actually live those values? We argue online about justice, kindness, morality. We correct others, criticize others, debate endlessly about what should or shouldn't be done. But Stoicism reminds us, words don't make the man, actions do. Marcus Aurelius, who was both an emperor and a philosopher, understood this deeply. As the most powerful man in the Roman world, he faced endless pressures to defend, justify, and explain himself. But in Meditations, his private journal, he wasn't trying to impress anyone. He was reminding himself of the discipline it takes to quiet the ego and live virtuously in silence. This quote cuts through the noise. It says, "Don't explain goodness. Don't debate it. Just be it." In the context of our three Stoic pillars, focus on reason, lower yourself, stay silent. This quote is the very core. To focus on reason is to ask, what does a good person do in this moment? Not what do they say, but what do they choose? To lower yourself is to say, I don't need to prove my goodness. I don't need to win applause. I need to be honest, just disciplined and kind, even when no one is watching. To stay silent is to trust that the life you live speaks louder than any defense you could ever give. Let's be honest. There's a part of us that wants to explain ourselves, to prove we're good, that we're right. But that impulse often comes from a fragile place, the ego. Marcus urges us to skip that. He's saying, you already know what a good man should be. So don't talk. Don't argue. Just be one. And what's beautiful about that? You don't need permission. You don't need recognition. You just need courage and consistency. It's quiet, it's powerful, and it's stoic to the core. So how do we apply all of this? Focusing on reason, lowering ourselves, and staying silent in the modern world? Because let's face it, we're not living in ancient Rome. We're not emperors, slaves, or wandering philosophers. We're professionals, students, parents, creators, entrepreneurs. We have smartphones buzzing in our pockets, social media apps designed to trigger our emotions, and a culture that rewards speed over depth and volume over wisdom. But that's exactly why Stoicism is more relevant now than ever. In the workplace, in meetings, who do we respect more? The one who speaks the most, or the one who thinks before they speak? Who earns real trust? The one who needs to be right, or the one who listens, absorbs, and responds with calm clarity? Reason, humility, and silence are rare in fast-paced environments. But when you embody them, you stand out. You become the one people turn to when things get chaotic. Not because you're loud, but because you're centered. In relationships, arguments with loved ones often escalate not because of the issue itself, but because of pride, ego, the need to win. But what if, instead of reacting, you paused? What if you lowered yourself, not to submit, but to understand? What if you chose silence not to punish, but to allow space for clarity and kindness? The Stoics teach us that love and wisdom are not found in dominance, but in self-restraint. On social media, this might be the hardest one. We live in a world where everyone is talking, posting, arguing. You're constantly tempted to jump in, to correct that comment, to reply to that insult, to defend your name. But here's the Stoic move. Don't. Not because you're weak, but because your peace is worth more than their approval. Remember Marcus Aurelius' words. You don't have to turn this into something. It doesn't have to upset you. You gain power the moment you choose not to react. You win when you don't take the bait. And most of all, in yourself. Focus on reason when your emotions scream. Lower your ego when you feel the need to control. Stay silent when the world tells you to scream. These aren't passive virtues. They're radical acts of strength. In a world full of reaction, you choose intention. In a world full of noise, you choose presence. And that is what makes you stoic. Let me leave you with this thought. You don't need to raise your voice to raise your life. You don't need to prove your worth to anyone, only to your own reason. And you don't need to win every argument to live with power and peace. The Stoics weren't perfect. They were human, just like you. They got angry. They struggled with pride. They faced criticism, betrayal, pressure, fear. But what made them different was that they trained themselves to pause, to listen inward, and to act from a place of principle, not impulse. So next time you're about to fire back that comment, next time your pride feels bruised, and you're tempted to defend yourself, next time you feel the itch to speak just to be heard, pause. Ask yourself, is this reason or ego? And then remember, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. Marcus Aurelius. Let your life speak for itself. Let your silence carry weight. Let your humility reveal strength. Because in a world full of noise, the quiet mind stands tallest, and the calm soul shines brightest. So walk forward, clear in reason, anchored in humility, and protected by silence. Not as a show of weakness, but as the highest form of wisdom. The Stoics left us the map. Now it's your turn to walk the path.